Okay, so all this talk about hair transplants this week, I know that I'm sure that I've made this video before at some point in some capacity. So we can call this the 2018 version of this video. But for me personally, I would feel ashamed if I got a hair transplant. I personally would feel that way. Now, some people have commented and said, Nick, I got a hair transplant. It was the best decision I could ever make. And for those people, I believe them. For them, it was the best decision they could make. But for me, it's not. And I think I want to challenge all of you to ask yourself this question. Self, would it be against my identity if I got a hair transplant? I think you need to ask yourself. I think you owe it to yourself, as a person who watches my video on hair loss, I think you owe it to yourself to ask yourself that question. I think you need to draw a line in the sand right now and determine whether you would feel ashamed, whether it would go against your identity to get a hair transplant or not. Here's kind of what put that thought in perspective for me. So I guess he's a great uncle that I have. I mean, he's like probably pushing 80 at this point. But he is a semi-famous like evangelist, somebody that at least locally you'd see on TV all the time, has a mega church and all that good stuff. Well, it was always important to him that he had his hair. So he has had multiple hair transplants over the years. And for a man who's in his 70s or pushing it, he's somewhere between 70 and 80, I don't know. But, you know, I'm trying to remember. Maybe he's Norwood 3 at the very worst. Probably not. Probably more like me for all I know. I wasn't paying attention to his hair, to be honest. It was only afterwards I found out that he's had multiple hair transplants over the years. But it just, something about it just seemed kind of off. To be a person who preaches about God and Christianity to people and, you know, finding meaning in life and serving one another, but yet still had issues with how he was created in a way that he was going to lose his hair, that he altered that way. To me, it somehow seemed phony, not real. Now, I'm not saying that people who get hair transplants are phonies, because, hey, there's a lot of people. What I'm saying is this, so please don't hear me out of context. I'm saying for some people, they're wired to get a hair transplant mentally, and it doesn't oppose who they are as a person. For me, it's a complete attack on my identity for me to get a hair transplant. When once a week, I'll have someone new to the channel and say, well, why don't you just get a hair transplant? And I always respond, because I don't want one. I really don't want that. For me, I would feel like a phony. I would feel like a phony if I got a hair transplant, and I would regret it. I would feel miserable. I would be depressed if I got a hair transplant. I would look in the mirror and I'd think, yeah, that's a good head of hair, and it'll help keep me from apparently aging over the next several years, but it's not who I am. And so the irony is, for me to get a hair transplant, I would hate myself so much that it would make things much worse for me internally. And that's the whole point. You know, hair loss is a trigger for a lot of people. It triggers, in my opinion, in my theory, it triggers a lot of undealt with insecurity in a lot of people. You know, I think a lot of people are insecure more than anything as they're noticing their hairline start to change, and that is an attack on their identity. But ultimately, if you're a confident person, a confident man who knows that many men go bald anyway, then why are you going to care about it? And see, I'm in that camp. That's why I've said before, there's people who watch 2 or 3 of my videos and then they never come back. There's no need to, because they realize, oh yeah, I'm a confident guy. I know plenty of guys that are young and bald, and they shave it off, they work out, and they're good to go. Why? How is it those people exist while others freak out about it all the time? I think ultimately it comes down to a confidence issue, and I think ultimately it comes down to your childhood, that whatever your wound was, whatever trauma that you went through, because all of us have something in our life that kind of defined us, a negative, dark moment in our lives that defined us, and we had to decide how that was going to brand us, how that was going to affect our identity. Some of us took that lesson in life and moved on and moved past it and learned to get over it. And thought, if I can get past that, I can get past anything. While others never quite dealt with it and therefore never quite moved on. Therefore, something as petty as hair loss is going to freak them out and depress them. That's definitely what I believe. Okay, here it is again. Here's another Batman reference. So today, this morning, and it's like my third time to see it in my life, but Batman Forever, the one with Nicole Kidman and Val Kilmer, that one. It's interesting, the dynamics of it, because Nicole Kidman plays a psychologist or psychiatrist or whatever, and so Bruce Wayne becomes basically one of her patients, and she starts explaining to him, you've got issues that you never dealt with. What are you dealing with? What is bothering you? And so then she starts to realize, his parents were killed, and then he fell down the shaft thing with the bats, and then he decided he wanted to embrace that fear and, to become a good guy. If you haven't seen it, it's on Netflix, Batman Forever. But it's what it makes me think of. I think it's almost so cliche and so predictable. And it's not about hair loss, it's about so many things. People in general don't deal with stuff that happened to them in their childhood or early adulthood. And because of that, they don't understand how to overcome things that they have no control over, like hair loss. I mean, yeah, you can control it by getting a hair transplant. But see, for me, as a man who thinks I can overcome anything because of what I've already overcome in my life, I see hair loss as just petty. So I don't need hair. I don't want a hair transplant. And if I did, it would be miserable for me. Another Black Mirror episode idea. Get a guy like me who's completely a confident guy with or without hair, kidnap me, do a hair transplant on me, then I wake up, I look in the mirror, no!